Hey everybody, I'm that one guy, and I wanted to create a series of videos to go over the Weakauras I've created. The whole purpose of the Weakauras is obviously to help you better understand your spec and hopefully help you play better as a result, but also to gamify the game. Because WoW does present you with some spell alerts for the specs you play, but not all. And so that leaves you looking for ways to identify if a certain buff or debuff is active. And that's where Weakauras can come in play. And I wanted to do more than just have an icon with a timer in it, right? I wanted to try to present you with visual effects that make it feel more like a video game and immerse you more into the spec you're playing. At least that's the idea. So in these videos, I'm going to go over the Weakauras I've created, how I intend for them to work, and show you how you can modify them if you'd like. So whether you've already found my Weakauras, or you're looking for some for a certain spec, or you just want to have a better idea of how Weakauras work in general, hopefully these videos will help you with that. Hello again everybody. This is for Arms Warrior, and I just want to say that for this one especially, but for all of my Weakura packs and all my specs, that they're only as good as the feedback that I get, because I don't get the opportunity to main or play a lot of these and in all of the content. So sometimes as you go through M plus or raid or whatever, you start to notice like, oh, it'd be better if this looked like this or this was in a different spot. And that's the feedback I'm looking for, because I don't have all 24 hours a day, all 7 days a week to be able to play every single spec and every single content. So as you have feedback, please absolutely leave it in the comments below, just because I want to make these specs great for the people that play them, and visually appealing for the people that play them. So thank you for everybody that gives me the feedback, and the person who helped me out with this one is Rothmar, a very good warrior main who's in my guild and a very friendly guy who knows a lot about Weakauras too. So let's take a look at what we've got for Arms Warrior. It's everything, right? If you had absolutely everything on your screen all at the same time, it would look like that, and that will not happen. A lot of these cooldowns, maybe they're kind of around the same time, but not going to be all thrown in your face all at once. So we'll come back to Colossus at the end. I didn't see anything that really needed to be on your screen for Slayer. The Marked for Death stuff is tied into the execute conditions, so it's tied in with that Weakura with execute conditions, which just kind of is true for whichever spec you're in. Avatar cooldown shows when there's 10 seconds left on Avatar or when it's off cooldown, just kind of like right there, so you don't miss it. Mortal Strike. When Mortal Strike is off cooldown and usable, it'll look like that. When you don't have enough rage, let's say Mortal Strike is off cooldown, but you don't have enough rage, it's just going to be a white circle. So if you ever wonder, like, why is it just a random white circle? You don't have any rage. And you can't cast Mortal Strike, but I hadn't run into that just because you seem to always have enough rage. Yay, warriors. And then when it's on cooldown, those will be gone, and it'll be this little circle, right? Letting you know when it's going to come back up. All right, and then cleave, those just pop up, right? It's either on cooldown or off cooldown. I don't have any other texture to show you if, when it's coming off cooldown. It could add that, but I was just trying to go for simplicity's sake, right? Just, it's there, you can use it or it's not. If you feel like there needs to be a different, version or iteration of it, let me know. But try to make it as visible as possible, just so you can see when you have it versus when you don't. Overpower. I'm using colors to indicate the charges of overpower. So when it's at 2 charges, it'll be a black circle like that. When it's at 1 charge, it'll be an off-white or gray or white, depending on how specific you want to get with your color indications. White or light colored would be what it looks like when it's 1 charge. And then obviously when it is on cooldown, same as Mortal Strike, it's going to have that little circle, right? Letting you know when it's going to be back up off cooldown. Okay, so just kind of your main buttons that you'd be pushing as an Arms Warrior, and underneath them would be execute, right? It matches the execute conditions that are true for the Weakura that's shared within the rotation guide for Arms. So I made sure that as I was making it, I was really close to being exactly right on how it needed to be shown. I just had it showing all the time, so now it just shows when the conditions are met, basically when you need to push the button. With the exception of, I think, when you're in execute, it's like, hey, if you're over 20 rage and nothing else is true, use execute. It's like, that one's going to be on you. But for the special conditions of when to push execute, it'll pop up on your screen. And then this would be your martial prowess buff. Something I saw related to the execute conditions, right? It stacks up to 2 from using your overpower. consumed by your Mortal Strike, but now you'll be able to track your martial prowess, all still kind of like in a nice little visual area where you're looking and hopefully not clogging up too much of your screen. Tactician, just had to recreate it because I play with no spell opacity, and I resized a little bit and moved it a little bit, so I just like being in control of my stuff. And for anything, this included, if you want to change its color, like let's just say you got a thing about something all being blue, you can click on it, go to the display tab. A lot of these are groups. The plus sign means it's a group of Weakauras or icons or pictures, right? So you'd go to the display tab instead of the group tab, and you click on the color icon here, and you can start to change things to whatever color you want it to be. My recommendation would be to desaturate first before you add colors, right? Because now you're going to be adding a color on top of a gray or white, as opposed to adding the color on top of this orangish red, right? So then instead of it blending, it'll actually just be the color that you want it to be. And as is true for everything else, if you don't like it, don't want it, don't need it, right click it and delete children in group, or go to the load tab and check the never box, and it will never show. Right? If you don't like the size of something, the easiest thing to do would be to go to the group, right, whichever one you click on, go to the group tab and go to group scale. That is the easiest way to scale something up and down. You may have to go then into the display tab of individual things and change its X offset, basically where it is left and right. Just because, as you see, if you scale this down, it starts to get in pretty tight and could even overlap or basically disappear. That's very small with Mortal Strike and Overpower, and if you get really large, it gets out really far. So it's but that'd be my recommendation, other than trying to go in and resize the height and width of every single texture, is just to use group scale, load tab if you don't want to delete something but you just don't want to see it, or right click and delete it, and then display tab is where you can change the color stuff. All right, back to where we were going. We talked about martial prowess, we talked about tactician and the execute conditions, and then this would be for executioner's precision, stacks up to 2 times, part of the conditions from using execute, right? For priority list of things. So this will let you know if you have 0, 1, or 2 stacks of executioner's precision. Pretty straightforward. And then a bunch of cooldowns: Champion Spear, Ravager, and Bladestorm. Since that's a choice node, they're going to be in the same spot in the exact same icon. And then Thunderous Roar. The reason I clicked on all of them like that is that Champion Spear, I wanted you to know, will be in the same spot as Thunderous Roar is. But because of the condition I set on there, which is basically if you happen to pick both of those, which I think would be rare to never, but if you happen to be talented into Thunderous Roar and Champion Spear, instead of them being awkwardly overlapped, Champion Spear will move out like that so you can see both. But otherwise, it would be located right there in the same spot. Ravager and Bladestorm will always be right there in that spot. And like I said, Thunderous Roar there. So those other main cooldowns that you can get from spec tree and class tree would be located in there with Avatar there. The only other ones to fit inside of all of this for like cooldowns and stuff would be Colossus, Smash, and or Warbreaker. Either or, again, same icon, same place, just because it's a choice, right? If you take Warbreaker, you don't have Colossus Smash anymore, and if you're not taking Warbreaker, you have Colossus Smash. So if you see that, that means those are off cooldown and you can use them. So when you don't have Tactician up, but you have all of your other cooldowns up, it would look a little like that on your screen. Just, again, visual cues, spell alerts, letting you know you can push a button now. The rest of it would be tracking Rend, Sweeping Strikes, Rage, and your Warrior cast bar. Rage, ideally, I'm setting to where you don't really need to track it, because like if you're thinking about, do I have enough Rage to Mortal Strike? You'll know, because right, it's either a white circle or that icon is there, so you know if you can do it or not. But still tracking your Rage. Rend, I have it set to when there is 4 seconds or less, because I think that's what I was talking about in the priority list. If there's 4 seconds or less, there will be a white kind of glow going around it, letting you know to refresh it. And Sweeping Strikes, what it will do is, if it is not active and not on cooldown, right, meaning you can use it, that bar will pop up, obviously not be filled, right, because you won't have the buff active, but it'll pop up and it'll also be glowing, so that again, you can know, it's a different way that I sometimes relay that something is off cooldown. So that's what Rend will do when it's under 4 seconds. And Sweeping Strikes isn't doing it. But whenever it's off cooldown and you don't have the buff, but you could have the buff basically, that will also do a very similar thing in Glow. So last thing would be the hero talents, and then to show what it looks like in combat. So for Colossus, we're tracking the Demolish cooldown, right? The reason it's down there is because this is also where Colossal Might is. So when Demolish is off cooldown, you will see this icon letting you know you can push the button. I had it up here, but I wanted to track Colossal Might. I didn't want a bunch of little dots going across the top of your screen, so I put them down here. So then the feedback and the suggestion was like, if you're tracking the buff to go with the ability, instead of having to look in 2 different places for it, because that would get annoying, put them all in the same spot. So if you want to figure out a different thing, like maybe stacking them all vertically and putting this back up there, go nuts. But for right now, when it's off cooldown, it's there, and Colossal Might stacks up to 10. And what these will do to, again, just try to make it easier on you to identify instead of having to count every single time and stop and, is that 9 or 10? Right, what it'll do is when you're at 10 stacks, all these little icons will get a little bigger. They'll just get a little bigger and they'll turn white, right? As it should be pretty visually apparent that you are at 10 stacks now because they will turn white. So that's it for what's in the pack, and now I'll show it in combat just so you can kind of see how it goes. So as with anything, you won't see anything on your screen until you enter combat. Right, and then as you do, you'll know about all your cooldowns. And I selected as many possible cooldowns as I could from the talent tree, just so that I could represent them here. And that's what I was talking about with Sweeping Strikes. It is off cooldown and not active, so it's going to glow like that, letting you know, hey, you could push that button. I don't have anything for your charges. Could potentially add something like that easily enough, but as far as like a lot of movement and utility things go, I tend not to track them. It's all just combat related, and then I leave it to your brain power to track your utility and defensives and things like that. But not opposed to adding them if I can find a nice clean way to do so. My 2 cents. All right, so when you enter combat like that, as you use stuff like Thunderous Roar, right, it goes away. As you use Ravager or Bladestorm, it goes away. If you were to use your Avatar and Warbreaker or Colossus Smash, go away. Cleave, Mortal Strike, right, on cooldown. Overpower is at 1 charge, no charges. Mortal Strike, Tactician, right, over and over and over again. And then you can see we're building up charges of Colossal Might down here at the bottom, right? And when eventually it gets to 10, you will see what I mean by it gets a little bigger, there you go, and turns white. So should be some visual clarity that you have 10 stacks, right? And then as you use it, they go away. But that's it, and then stuff comes back up off cooldown and you use it. Sweeping Strikes is letting me know I could push the button, right? And I do. And as you just are pushing your buttons, you see you're stacking up your Colossal Might again. This is in Colossus. I will probably attempt to try Slayer here in a second to see if I can proc some of the Marked for Death things with the execution and things like that. And there you go. See, we got 10 stacks again. Turns white. I do not have my Demolish up yet. So that could be something too, is like maybe those are partially hidden or something. If Demolish isn't up, just for less stuff being on your screen. But I think it's all right to know, right? And then there, Avatar's back up, Thunderous Roar's back up, and on we go, right? That's how it works. So then just to show Slayer, just because that will actually take sudden death, and you can probably hopefully see some of the execute conditions. You see I was just trying to talent into all the stuffs to show for the Weakauras. Alright. It would be, again, very similar, right? It's from one to the other. Nothing too drastic. Right? Everything looks pretty much the same, except we are going to hope There you go. To proc, it has that nice sword. It's supposed to be a sword ringing sound, like that. Right? But that's it. That'd be it. As those conditions are met, that will pop up. The color change, that means Juggernaut's expiring if it's brown. There's an audio cue just to, because again, I've heard those are nice, and I was playing with an audio cue on something else and realized I was sad when it was gone. Juggernaut's expiring. The colors don't matter as much, right? You could probably be all right if you didn't have them. Didn't have them is probably the right way to say it. I just like having the color effects and just another visual cue of why it's there. But otherwise, I'm sure you could probably take away the colors and it'd be the exact same. But that's what it'll do. It'll pop up on your screen when it's time to push the execute button. And other than that, if I've left anything off that you feel like absolutely has to be a part of it, or I need to change something that you've seen because it just really isn't great the way that it is, feel free to leave feedback in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you like it and have fun. Again, I hope you found that helpful. I do intend to make a Weakura pack for every spec. So if I haven't made one for the spec that you play or that you'd like to see, just comment that down below. Again, I do intend to make one for every spec, but if I see people asking for it or really wanting one, I'll probably get to it quicker than if I just do it on my slow, leisurely pace. I hope it will enhance your gameplay. Like I said, it's all about gamifying the game and making it more fun and more immersive for you, while also helping you improve as a player because the information that you need to react to is hopefully more readily available. If you have any other questions about this Weakura pack that you just watched or any other ones, again, please feel free to comment. I try to be as interactive as possible in my YouTube section. And that's it. I hope you have a great day.